Hello and welcome to the Societal Lens. This week's topic is menstrual health, and I'm joined by Aidan, Ruby, Charlie and Liv. My name is Julia and I'll be your host.
How about we start off by talking about what menstruation is, how it works?
I think about 4 out of 5 of us here can relate to that. So Aidan, what are your thoughts?
Well, this is a bad point to start me off.
You took biology, didn't you?
Yeah, come on, you learned about that. Aidan, what is menstrual health?
Menstrual health is just like the health according to your menstruation period during once a month cycle. I remember if it's H and LH, but that's all I remember.
Period generally lasts from like 3 to 7 days.
Yeah,
as a quick disclaimer, we are not medical health professionals. We are speaking of personal experience and things we have researched, and feel free to do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Did anybody have like their period weirdly young? So like, did anyone else have like what age were you when you had your period?
I was
apart
13.
from Aidan,
I was 13 as well, yeah.
I think I was 13.
Losers. I was 12. I win. It's not a competition. So the figures you've got are like 8 to 11, but none of us can really relate to that because we were all. I think we were all quite young because my mum got hers at like 15 or 17. So the age can actually vary as to when you do get your period.
Yeah.
I don't actually.
I was so confused when I got it. I didn't know that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And I don't know about it, but I did do some research.
Mm-hmm.
And well, most of this is what I thought of, because the fact that I don't know how old you guys were when you actually learned what a period was, but I think most people when you're like 8 years old, you haven't learned about it yet.
We had a primary. I remember having a primary school thing. I just distinctly remember my primary school teacher bringing out a tampon and dropping it in a cup of water.
Oh my God. I remember that as well. I think mine did the same thing.
We were all okay. So when I was in primary school, they were teaching us. And I just distinctly remember my teacher taking a tampon like out of her purse, opening it, taking a cup of water and like pouring it over the tampon and showing how it expands. And everyone was going. Everyone was like, "Whoa!" And she's like, "Yep, this is the life of the woman. Life of the woman.
That's what
this
she
is
said.
what you'll This is what you'll have inside." And it's like, okay. But yeah, that's what I remember from being educated about menstrual health when I was younger. I also vaguely remember a sheet that had like a labeling activity, you know, where they had female and male. Yeah, anyone else have stories from like young childhood?
When we learnt this was year 6, so 10, 11. It was very vague. So the girls and boys were separated.
Obviously.
Yeah. And so the girls went into this other classroom and the teacher was a woman and she was talking about the period and everything, and she was like, "Oh, there's all these holes." No one really knew what was going on. So what I'm saying is the education surrounding menstruation wasn't very effective, especially at a young age, which isn't great because you can start as young as 8.
Or even younger in some cases.
Yeah. So really, education needs to be better.
I went to a Christian primary school, and the language they used when like describing kind of like sexual education and like periods was very like flowery and like it was like a gift from God, which was a bit odd, I think, for children who didn't really understand the metaphors to begin with. But yeah, I sort of just remember it happening, and then my mum going, "Oh yeah, just take these and move on."
I had the opposite experience, where the teachers would like stand at the front of the class and go like, "Yeah, it was horrible, awful." When I got my first time, I was screaming. They were talking about how like scared they were, and it's kind of comforting, but at the same time, it's like, will I be scared? With my own parents as well. My mother was like, I cried for days. So
I do.
I was, yeah.
I mean, based off research I was looking at, found like the education system in the UK is extremely different to other countries because you all have very distinct emotions and feelings with menstruation in the education system.
Due to being British?
Well, no, but you had ideas and formations of the cycle of menstruation.
Oh, yeah.
But in countries such as Egypt, I think it was 66% of people. So basically, in some countries such as like Egypt, only 66% of people are aware of their first cycle when it happens. And in countries like Bangladesh, I think it's only 32%. And like for your first period, they were just unprepared and did not know what to actually do, which is just like different experiences of different countries of wealth.
Yeah, because did anyone... Go first.
Yeah, I get that, but my first time, I didn't know what was going on because of the education. So obviously it is worse in LICs, low-income countries, but it's sometimes the same in England and in Britain, like depending on how young you get it.
Yeah, because we all bleed, but I think there's also kind of a problem where in some countries, like having your period kind of signalises you becoming like a woman, which is not only just massively factually incorrect. Just because you get your period does not mean you're prepared for like childbirth or anything that comes with having a period, which is really odd that we're designed in that way. You know, just like, yes, you can have a period, you can have children, but also your body will collapse if so happens. But yeah, but it's...
Yeah, it's pretty... Yeah, I think it's important to note that in a lot of cultures, getting your period isn't just like becoming a woman. It's considered like a filthy thing. There's a lot of stigma around that in specific cultures as well, and religions.
But there is like a ceremony where there's like a golden child is like chosen, and this child is worshipped by look it up.
Yeah, you're saying a lot. We should probably have a source for this.
It's like a golden child, and they're worshipped as like a god, and like as like from a child, and there's like special characteristics they need to meet, and this like practice of like worship is continued until they get their period, in which it is stripped from them and it's given to then another child, which is a little bit messed up if you think about it properly.
Just in the meantime, I was thinking more of...
in India, it is seen as dirty when someone's on their period, and they'll be separated from other members of their family.
Yeah, I think that's it. When I looked it up, it didn't say the country. It just said some cultures.
I found it. They're called Kumaris, and they're in Nepal, and they're worshipped as like reincarnations of a Hindu goddess, and they're worshipped by like Hindus and Buddhists. And they get to be a like Kumari, but it is believed that the deity leaves the Kumari's body when she has her first menstruation, which is I think it's really odd that even in like that practice, like having your period is a symbol of like losing divinity or kind of losing purity. And I think that's something that's seen in a lot of other cultures. Even in the West, it's seen like having a period is still like it's really taboo and like not talked about as much.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, do you know how common that practice is, though, what you talked about?
I don't know how common it is now. I don't know.
I just feel like I feel like we should just know that we don't know how many people actually do that.
It's not the entirety of Nepal. It's just a thing that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, that's in the religious beliefs as well. I mean, some religions also see it as quite a dirty practice. I believe is it Islam. I mean, I'm not the biggest religion. Touching the Quran during a period is not allowed.
Yes, that's true.
That's true. Yeah, because it's a dirty practice that you aren't pure. I'm not really know of that topic, but there is something different religions.
Yeah, I think there's a similar thing in Orthodox Judaism as well. Yeah. In terms of like other things that can affect periods, I think gender dysphoria must also have quite a big impact.
A lot of the time, getting your period and menstruating is associated with womanhood. So if you've ever watched an advert on the TV about pads or tampons or any period products, it will be really happy, smiley women playing tennis or
skating,
riding horses. And also, period products are packaged in pink, flowery designs, which can cause dysphoria in people who don't identify as women who still menstruate. So gender dysphoria is something that happens when a person would experience distress because of a mismatch between their anatomy and their gender identity. So you can see why getting a period would cause dysphoria.
I just wanted to quickly add on to what Ruby was saying, because yesterday I was in Sainsbury's, and this is relevant, but I was going to like buy some pads, and I noticed that, you know how it says what the aisle is at the top? it called it feminine care, and I think if you're gendering period products, that can be a big problem as well.
To be fair, I understand why they are kind of gendered, but I think there's definitely a more discreet way that it could be. Sorry.
I think, I think it is fine just because it is. The rest of the aisle generally is feminine hygiene products, specific, like makeup, stuff like that. That's usually where it is. And I don't think it would make sense for it to be put anywhere else just for convenience's sake. And also, back to sort of the packaging, if I remember this correctly, Always, the brand Always has had the Venus, the sign? You know, the female symbol? Yeah, it used to have that on the packaging, but a few years ago they removed it for this reason, I believe.
Good for them. Because, like, I think the concept of feminine hygiene is definitely a marketing tactic in a way, because there's, like, the pink tax where things are just kind of painted pink or branded for women, and then you add, like, £5 onto the price and everyone's really cool with it, when you could buy the male product and have it just be the same. And I think that's seen with a lot of things, and I think it's also one of the reasons why, like, kind of feminine hygiene products are quite expensive, just because they know they know it's an essential need that they can market towards women and make them pay a lot for it, because God forbid, you know, we get basic hygiene.
Yeah, going on from that, I'm not too sure about the stats or if this is in the UK or if it's just in America, but men's razors are taxed as an essential product because obviously men have to get rid of all that hair.
God forbid they have any hair. No hair for men. Aiden, why do you have hair?
Oh, who knows? It's essential not to have.
But hygiene products like pads and tampons and everything are taxed as a luxury because obviously people have to have the luxury of not bleeding everywhere.
Yeah, I was just going to say that now that I think about it in the store, I'm pretty sure that because of the way the specific store I'm thinking of, the way that it's been, like, organised, I'm pretty sure that men's products are also in the feminine hygiene area. So, you know what? Equality!
I mean, going off that point, with, like, men and females, like, products and healthcare and stuff, often men aren't allowed to go to those areas, and as a male I was often told don't go to those areas. It's quite seen as taboo for a male. Even when I would go for my sister to buy products, you're shunned upon for understanding the topics, and that is due to the being marketed as a feminine product.
Yeah, because I think period products must be even more of sort of a luxury in war-torn countries, because we've got a lot of wars going on currently. Think like the war in like Palestine and Ukraine, in Lebanon even more recently. And I think the problem with that is if you're in like a stressful situation, like being evacuated from a war zone, you're unable to carry like everything you need, you can't plan ahead, and if period products are available, they're often sold at such high prices that women kind of have to like choose between them and essentials, including food, which means that more often than not, a lot of women are left without period products. And I think we've all seen growing up those kind of like adverts in the back of bathroom stores, where it's like, you've lost your home, you've lost your family, and now you've got your period. And there is like definitely an element of truth to that. And I think it's really hard to be a woman and get your period in like war-torn countries, just because as like a stressful situation as war would be, it'll result in like abnormalities, like heavier periods and more painful ones and irregular ones, and all of these which require more access to menstrual products that like these people, these women, won't have access to because of where they are. I'm
going off the thing of LICs with countries that like often countries that have experienced wars, such as like Somalia experienced wars in the 1990s, I believe, and the continent has not been able to financially recover, is still struggling so much with malnutrition as an issue. I believe the rate is about like 51.3% for Somalia of malnutrition, and that leads to women not being able to have periods, often due to the stress and the body not being able to produce enough hormones to have a period, which, as you said, leads on to heavier cycles and issues later on.
Sorry, you had your hand on the front again.
So, a study from UN Women and its partner in Cameroon found that 99% of women don't feel safe in refugee camp toilets. This is going off what Julia said about wars. Girls who don't have safe places to change period products or go to the toilet are at a higher risk of sexual violence.
Hi, you did some research on a charity, didn't you?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think other people have also, but one of the charities I spoke about or discovered was Freedom for Girls, which they work mostly in the UK to provide women with period products, but as well as, I think, West or East Africa?
Eastern you put, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so East Africa. And they just help and teach women like how to make like renewable pads and like how to sew them. They often do a lot of campaigns. They also provide women with these like menstrual products because like charities such as these, even though it's mostly UK based, it having that larger range as well is also just helping women. And any workplace is also any woman needs help.
Really important.
Are we able to put a link to this charity?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
okay.
will. When I post it, I will put that in the description.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Also, some research that has been found from a 2017 study of refugee camps in Syria and Lebanon found that 60% of female refugees didn't have access to underwear and had no access to sanitary products when they had their period. And this could be quite problematic as it led to many people getting urinary tract infections or UTIs as a result of that, which could harm their health.
Yeah, and again, in like conclusion to the war segment, just like a period of war acts as an acute stressful condition to women, and as we said, it results in menstrual abnormalities, but actually it results in menstrual abnormalities in about 10 to 35% of women, according to studies, and it's likely due to the duration of exposure to war. And like the consequences of not having these products can just result in making an already stressful and just at-risk person just feel so much worse about their lives since they can't like properly maintain their hygiene and their dignity.
I mean, going on that, there's actually a term for like that as a whole, which is called period poverty. It's when women don't have access to the hygiene, the menstrual health products, and all those kind of things to be able to safely have a period in safe conditions.
By the way, if you want links to any of the studies or resources, we will be linking the news articles and websites we got our information from.
This website that I used to research this is called Clue, and I think what it is, it's a blog that talks to people and finds out their opinion on all sorts of different topics. And they did an article on gender dysphoria and menstruation. And one user of the website said that sometimes they feel not trans enough because period dysphoria feels like such a common experience among transmasculine people. They're dysphoric about their physical appearance and social perception, but their bodily functions don't bother them. This does say something about societal expectations within the community, and also expectations for trans people like within themselves.
The way that hormones change throughout the month is very much different related to this, and it is very discomforting knowing that whether I like it or not, I act different based on that schedule. That's pretty much out of my control, alongside with just the bleeding in general.
Yeah, I think not only trans people, but I think trans people and cis women would both benefit from destigmatizing periods, just because in its current state we still have a very Victorian mentality in the UK when it comes to periods, and it's seen as a very dirty and shameful thing, and men aren't really encouraged to learn about it or even be mindful to it. And there's like there's a lot of kind of like sexist jokes that get thrown about like, oh, she must be on a period whenever a woman feels emotion.
Yeah, are you on your time of the month?
Or are you on your time of the month whenever a woman has an opinion? So that's kind of an example of how the period has sort of been weaponized against females for almost centuries. And it's just, I think it would really benefit not only trans individuals, but cis women if the period was brought as a thing, just it was normalised in the same way that other bodily functions are.
Right, yeah, I do definitely agree with that. It's just that there's a bit of a difference there where it's women are expected to have this. But like, because you mentioned this, that men aren't expected to know about periods, so when a trans man, for example, has this like really in-depth knowledge and this personal experience of girlhood, for example, it can just like add to that discomfort and the feeling of not having grown up as a cis boy. Mm-hmm. And that's not really talked about at all much from at least from what I've seen. But yeah, it's quite discomforting to see how much anyone with periods is just affected by not being given a space to talk about it, their own like personal experiences.
But regardless, like in the education system, when men were taught about periods, we weren't really taught much, but we were taught about how it's not masculine and quite shameful to actually have a period. And that goes into the point of like how men, to be a man, you can't have a period, and how that gender dysphoria can actually be led on by that education.
Yeah, because like, and I know I criticize the like kind of the male stereotype that like a woman's period just makes her emotional and like crazy, as it were. But I think it's odd how clinical the discussion of periods becomes, especially in the education system. It's just so like it's very like harsh, and it's not very kind of. We didn't really learn about kind of the symptoms of periods or the consequences of it. We just learned, oh, this is why it happens, and that's it. And that no more is kind of developed on, and there's nothing about how trans people might feel when they have their period. There's nothing about like the kind of the sociological impacts of it. And I think if that was brought to education, I think that would really help remove the stereotypes around periods.
Yeah, so there's kind of like it is what it is kind of view, but at the same time, people who get their period are kind of like stigmatized for a bodily function, and as we were saying, like the jokes, like, oh, she's on her period because she's mad.
Sorry, I remember what I was going to say now when Julie said that, it was mental health I was going to talk about.
Yes!
Because mental health is so often blamed on, like, oh, are you sure it's not just even within my own family, with people that I trust, it's like, I don't get that. Because if someone, for example, with mental health issues hurts themselves on their time of the month, that doesn't make them any less hurt. That doesn't lower their risk by any amount. I do not see why people will disregard those feelings just because of the period, or assume that is why it's happening.
I think it's kind of a way for other people to not have to deal with emotions that, like, especially women, like, feel. Because if you think about it, even if, like, your emotions are, like, heightened, like some kind of werewolf, I don't have any better words for it. Yeah, on their period, it doesn't make what they're feeling any less real or any less valid just because you're on your period. And like your period can actually it can have an impact on your neurological health as well. So if you're depressed while on your period, there's like this whole like conditions surrounding that. And if you can't, it's and it links in with the stigma surrounding mental health. And like if you can't control it, it doesn't make any sense why it should be cancelled out by your period, or why it should make it less significant.
Yeah, a lot of the time, the period is clinicalized. Is that the word I'm thinking of? I don't know. But if you've heard of PMS, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like, premenstrual syndrome is an official diagnosis.
It's a defense in court. Like, people recognise that it is... sorry, I know you're generally looking. But, like, it's recognised in court as a defence for, like, certain crimes and it can get you reduced sentence. So it's clear that the government and the legal system and people at large know the effects of periods. It's just people refuse to talk and educate about them.
Yeah, I want to circle back to trans individuals, because being trans in a lot of communities can be pathologized, like seen really highly as mental illness. So like, it's really difficult to talk about menstruation when you're already seen as sort of sick. It just makes it that much more difficult to be taken seriously and to view yourself in a nicer light, essentially.
I mean, the idea of people who are also not trans, but exactly, but people who are intersex also have period. People who are intersex are often shamed if they do have a period, and like even when I've dated a person who was and they had a period, they did not want to tell anyone because it was seen as disgraceful, as even though they were seen as a man, they had one and it was ashamed to tell someone that.
Sorry, I've just remembered the study, or not remembered, I've looked it up. The study of premenstrual syndrome, basically that male anger seems like a rational response, whereas, we've talked about it loads.
Female Rage, the musical.
Yeah, basically. And the people who conducted that study was, it was Bresco and Ullman in 2008.
Going on to period products, Ruby, you did research on this.
I did. Basically, I was looking at environmental sustainability of each of the products. What I believe is the most commonly used period products, pads and tampons, they're both, single use. So they're not exactly environmentally sustainable. Tampons are way more environmentally friendly because they only take 5 to 6 months to decompose. However, when they decompose, they can put toxic chemicals into, the water and the land and everything. Pads take 500 to 800 years to decompose. And for both pads and tampons, someone could use over 11,000 in their lifetime. Something that's a lot better, but not exactly the best, is menstrual cups, which are reusable and they can last between 2 and 10 years depending on the material that they're made out of. So someone would only use between 4 and 20 in their lifetime. Most are made out of silicone or rubber or latex or elastomer. All of those do use fossil fuels to, be made, and they could take 50 to 500 years to decompose.
Sounds great for the environment.
Indeed. Cloth pads and period underwear are way better to use. Not better, I don't want to shame you if you don't use them because they are quite expensive. But they're both reusable. They can last about 2 to 5 years each, and they can be composted sometimes depending on the materials used to make them. To be honest, the resources needed to make and wash them isn't the most sustainable either. Like the chemicals that are involved, pesticides and washing liquid. I don't know what's used to do laundry. I do laundry, but I don't know what it's called, whatever. There's a lot of water involved in making both of them, and also fossil fuels just in the factories that make them. And people who make them might be exploited. I'm sorry, I've been talking for a really long time, so I'm going to let someone else take over now.
So, I thought the water would be used for cleaning it. I don't know, how does period underwear work?
So, for both cloth pads and period underwear, they're made out of cloth or cotton sometimes, and cotton requires a lot of water to grow. Like, I don't know the stats for the underwear, but t-shirt that's made of cotton would require nearly 3,000 litres of water in making it.
I just
Julie's
wanted to but I really want to ask, if it's just made of cloth, doesn't it leak through? I've never seen one before.
Layers of cloth, and I think there is some material in between the layers of cloth that is hyper absorbent.
I was going to say, me who's feeling really guilty for wearing jeans right now.
You should be.
Yeah, just all the water gone.
But I don't know. How well do they work?
Period underwear?
Yeah.
Okay, I can answer this because I actually have some pairs myself because gotta keep changing.
Yeah.
But it's not actually that bad because you just do that for the day. And then it's it doesn't you'd think it would get everywhere, but it doesn't. It just sinks in. It's like a pad, but it looks more discreet, and you don't have to change it. It doesn't feel as embarrassing. And then you just kind of pop it in the wash, and you're good to go.
Oh, it's that effective.
Yeah,
well, that's cool.
It's really good, especially for people with heavy periods. It's. So to sum up, we've talked about how menstrual health can be worsened under war, how it can be harder to experience in low-income countries, how it can be harder to experience for trans individuals, and also we've talked about mental health and menstrual health and its education in schools. And I think what we've made clear is that there's some clear inequality and even ignorance in both the UK and in countries across the world that the government should really be striving to correct and change mindsets on. And in conclusion, if you'd like to do any of this research yourself, if you'd like to research anything we've talked about, the links will be in the description. And thank you for tuning in. Goodbye.
Thanks for-
It is.
Aiden, how old were you, Aiden?
So I was a very certain age when
I have been given a phone. Mercer has given Dobby a sock. Were you holding my hand? Were you holding my hand or going for the pumpkin?
I was trying to tap the pumpkin, but yeah, I didn't. Yeah,
I was waiting for you to start talking. That's what the silence
I'm
was.
sorry.
You have to do that right next to the microphone. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm eating an apple as well, and I really hope that I hasn't picked up on any of them.
So do I.
What I already knew before, which is there's no ethical consumerism.
Under capitalism.
Yes, indeed. Oh, you've got it. That's fantastic.
You're very welcome.
So